Streaming. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. What a day, what a performance. We have so much to talk about. Second straight walk-off win. We're going to get into some more minor league talk. We're going to talk about what's on deck for this team and just enjoying the triumph of a walk-off win today. All on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Want to first introduce myself. I'm Jeff Ellis, host of Locked On Guardians, as I have been for all 700 plus episodes. We are going to try another stream tonight. People like them. It's interesting. Streams sometimes do not get as many views as other things. We're going to try it out. It was a fun day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. I know what you're saying. You said you were recording late, and I was, but here's the problem. I hit the pause button, and I didn't realize I'd hit the pause button. So it is... there is nothing there. It is just paused. Good 1 minute of podcast. But what a game. What a comeback today. Guardians win 5-3. Second walk-off in a row for Andres. It is his first walk-off win. This team was getting no hit until, the 6th, 7th inning? It's something that needs to be commented on. Chris Archer had been no-hitting them for most of this game. They didn't even get multiple hits until Thornburg came in. Archer had the one hit. Moran was 1 1/3 innings, no hits. Duffy 1 2/3 innings, no hits. This was ridiculous. Just going through and watching how it went, no one would have expected this. Not Bieber's sharpest game, not his worst one, but kind of middish. It was a mid game for him. Trevor Stephan was great. Brian Shaw had a nice outing. I do have to throw out what I talked about on Twitter, which led to the most GIFs I've ever seen of people vomiting. And, sorry, hopefully that doesn't trigger anyone, putting it that way. But the fact of the matter is, he's at 33 appearances, I want to say. If Shaw gets to 35, he makes 150K extra. 40, another 150K. 45, another 150K. Once he gets up to 60... it then jumps to 250, which would put him at $4 million, which would tie him with Austin Hedges for 5th highest salary on the Guardians. And he still has things beyond that. It's, 250K for each 5 after 60. I think he can make up to $5 million. I don't know if he'll hit it, but it does feel like, is Tito his agent? Is Tito getting a kickback on this? It's kind of crazy to go and look at that data and think he got that much money from this team. This team. I mean, he's the big free agent signing. Luke Mailey was 2. Enya de los Santos, that's your 3 big free agent signings. And again, it's really interesting, just, speaking of big signings, to think about this whole Freddie Freeman situation. I talked about it yesterday quite a bit, so I'm not going to dwell here. But you got to wonder, is it Cleveland? Is it the Yankees? If Atlanta doesn't go out and make that trade, where does he go? But remember, I will say this again. He is from the Atlanta area, from the state of Georgia. He probably took a hometown discount when he signed that contract, so it's not exactly a one-to-one, but it's interesting to look at. Let's go back to this game. So Andres had been hit, 4 times in this series? I think it was 4 times he got hit. 3 times. And what better revenge is there than for him to hit the walk-off home run? Clearly one of the 3 stars in this game. Unbelievable performance. And, it was interesting because in spite of the lack of hits, Archer was wild. They had 6 walks. They got to that situation where you had, was it runners on first and second, or was it, I think it was first and second. I don't think it was second and third. No, it was first and second because Andres had the double, which broke up the no-hitter, and then a walk by Franmil right after him, I want to say. or maybe it was a walk by Palacios. I can't remember, but either way, no, it was a walk by San De Leon. That's what it was. But to get to it, it's like Straw and Kwan both had opportunities with runners in scoring position and 1 and 2 outs and a strikeout and a weekend field single. And I know there's this whole thing to get mad. I mean, Straw had a good game. Straw reached base 3 times. Up until that point, before that inning, the Guardians had reached base 6 times. Of those 6 times, 2 were by Straw and 2 by Kwan. Then those 6 times they had reached before that inning were 5 walks and a hit batter. But, they had represented most of the on-base appearances. Who reached base multiple times in this one? Well, Kwan had 2 walks. Straw had 2 walks. San De Leon with 3 walks. Like, give the guy credit. 3 walks today. Andres had a hit, and he got hit by a pitch. Jose had a hit and a walk. Let's see, was it just... And then Miller was the other player who got boinked in this one. But he's now down to 61 OPS. We've talked about before. He had a good month. Shroom, where are you, bud? Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing well. Do you still feel comfortable with him? How are you feeling about him? In my general view right now, it's like it's interesting to go look at his baseball savant data, which I did, because we all talk about the bad defense at first, but they like his defense on savant, so I don't know what it's rating against because he's also played all over. And then his sprint speed score is actually pretty good as well, but he's been really bad. Like, Owen Miller should not be playing regularly, and we had a late change to the lineup because of a muscle injury for Oscar Gonzalez that, we'll see if that holds him out, what that does. If you are listening to the show, pause right now and go check out the Nolan Jones Grand Slam home run that occurred today. It is a majestic Grand Slam. It is totally worth your time. So I would highly recommend going and checking out that little bit of information, watching that clip, because, he should be up. Like, at this point in time, how often does Ernie Clement play because they don't have anyone else who can play third? Now, Nolan Jones, you don't really... And I'll say this, the Grand Slam was off a lefty. But if you call up a Nolan Jones and you send down an Owen Miller, you're getting more left-handed, but you're also just making your team better. Might as well try it out. Might as well see if something positive can happen. He is just playing so well, and Owen Miller is not, and maybe Miller can get some reps to figure out what's going wrong, but it's not just that Miller is bad, it's that he is really bad over the last month. He's gotten progressively worse, and he's not really bringing anything to the lineup, but the problem is Tito's still going to play him a lot just because of platoon splits, which then hurts your team because the platoon splits don't matter if you can't play well. And that's just kind of my overall thought here. I wish Miller had kept it up. I really do. It's, people sometimes think that, I want to be proven right. No, I'd rather see the team I root for play well. And I think Nolan Jones gives him a better opportunity. He can spell Jose at third. I'm also worried about Jose's thumb injury. I mean, he has not been the same guy since he hurt that thumb. He just hasn't been. He's fallen off on all of the, the data, everything else. Over on Locked On, we did a poll amongst all of our hosts, and who are the MVP candidates? Who are the MVP candidates? Well, since I can tell you right now that Jose wasn't top 3 anymore. There was a time where it was 1A, 1B. It's not really that right now. I'll have that graphic showing up in the show and on part of my cover. But it's, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think that he is fully healthy? Do you think that he is someone who is maybe trying to do too much and play through an injury, when this is a situation where maybe this is someone who should take a week, take 2 weeks, make sure that he is fully ready and able to be that all-star who, was the center of this team? It's not to say that he's a bum or anything like that by any means right now. It's just that he's not quite the same player he was. There's the graphic. Let me shrink that down. Put it up here for a second. But that's, you don't really need to see me, do you? But that's kind of the infographic to show what we voted for MVP. I did homer out because I knew Jose wouldn't necessarily get a ton of votes, so I voted him 1, even though I don't know if I necessarily fully am on board with that right now. But yeah, 4th right there. What do you think about these ranks? You can let me know. Hit me up on my Twitter at JeffMLBDraft. We're going to take our first sponsor break here on the show. I need to, you know how it goes. And that wonderful sponsor today for the show, got to get through all my windows, is BetOnline. A consistent sponsor for us is BetOnline. Listen, I am not necessarily someone who knows the most about these things, but when I give you good information, you want to head over to BetOnline. And when I give you those ones that I'm like, this is you should pay attention, I'm like 4 for 4 in those. So BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports development, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports, scores, podcast news this season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, baseball, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Sorry, in the middle of that ad read, I got a thing about the internet not working. That type of stuff throws you off when you're in the middle of a read and you're doing a live stream. And you're like, uh-oh. But no, apparently everything is good. This is the problem. The stream is always inconsistent, and that's just the thing of it. And then when I post these, I got to be honest, I get lower views. Like, it gets less watches. So if you want more of these streams, you got to be more active and or watch them in a higher amount. I'm just going to be very honest and upfront about that. Getting back to this game, barely gotten into it. Haven't done the box score bingo. Haven't given our 3 stars. Haven't given the stick for this one. Going through, we've discussed. It was one of the more memorable games of the year. After back-to-back walk-offs. If you go back and watch my episode with Sully and Brandon Warner, I said they need to go 5-3, and that's what they did. Now, unfortunately, they got swept by Boston. If they just win one of those games, right now they're tied for first. And it unfortunately doesn't get any easier because they're going to New York, who's on a record-setting pace, and they're facing the murderer's row of New York's pitching staff. So, yikes. I mean, not that there's an easy part of that New York pitching staff, but they say they're going. I believe New York's coming to Cleveland, in my long memory, it always feels like they go to New York when New York comes because New York fans seem to come out of the woodwork in Cleveland. But I honestly look at this, and I'm like, take one. With the way things are going right now, their best chance is probably Sunday. Savale, I thrive on interaction. So let me know what you think about the idea of, trading for an arm, moving Savale to the pen. But we know Savale has struggled. Savale and Tristan McKenzie have the lowest WAR of any pitchers on this team, and they're going Thursday and Friday against Garrett Coles and Nestor Cortez, who, you can't help but look at Nestor Cortez and think about Matt Blake, who left Cleveland, was the pitching coordinator in Cleveland, to go become the Yankees pitching coach. We lost Ruben Niebla, and we lost Matt Blake, and back-to-back seasons because we have Carl Willis. I'll just leave it at that. So you have those two at the front, and then Jordan Montgomery's pitching very well, but Zach Plesac has been on a hot streak. The positive after this is when it evens up. Detroit and Kansas City. The schedule really opens up if you are a Guardians fan after this one for the Cleveland Guardians, and that's essentially the saving grace. Like, this is a hard 3 games here, but this was a brutal part of their schedule. And outside of the Boston series, it went well. They took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, took 5 out of 8 from the Twins. I talked about going and check out the Nolan Jones Grand Slam. Go listen to some of those Twins announcers calling the walk-offs. The defeatedness in their voice. They swept the Rockies. They took 3 out of 4 from Oakland. They took 2 out of 3 from Texas. Outside of the Boston series, they've won every series this month. And, I should say last month, because by the time you listen to this one, it'll be July. But still, the Yankee series can be tough. But then you have 4 against the Tigers, 3 against the Royals, 4 against the White Sox, 4 against the Tigers, and then the All-Star break. And the White Sox have lost 6 of 8. All that talk about the White Sox coming back, they are tumbling and struggling, and they're 5.5 back in the wild card. They still have a higher chance to make the postseason than the Guardians right now, according to Fangraphs. But it's a hard path for them to go. So it's not when the White Sox, who are having a hard time, and the Guardians have played well against this year, are the team that are the hardest team in the next stretch. That's a fantastic sign. I mean, Detroit and Kansas City might as well already be kicking the curb. No, that's not what I want. Might as well. We know the season is done for those teams. Like, there's no coming back at this point in time if you are a fan of those teams. So we want to thank you to B Skrills and Sanjay. Sanjay, I'm going to apologize now because I'm terrible at pronunciation, which I assume you know if you listen to the show. AR. B Skrills asks, he more says, back-to-back walk-offs. I agree, they are great. It's a lot of fun, and thank you to B Skrills for many comments on the videos. I appreciate that, dude. And with Sanjay, do you think they call up Nolan Jones soon? I would hope so, especially with Oscar. Why am I doing weird pronunciation? With Oscar Gonzalez. If the abdomen injury is a real thing, then yeah, it's time. And especially because, again, now you wouldn't play him against lefties like they've done with Clement, where they do the thing but Andres is now playing more, so I don't think we're going to see that platoon. But Nolan Jones gives you that ability as someone who could play against lefties, play right field, can come in. Here's the thing, honestly, a Nolan Jones, Oscar Gonzalez platoon in right field sounds great to me right now. With what Oscar's kind of regressing to mean, I think that could be a highly productive. You'd think Oscar's been, but the problem with Oscar we talked about is he's been the ground ball king so far since he's been called up, and that's part of the reason I'm a little bit down on him. But Nolan Jones, I think, should be called up soon. I do. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think he should be called up. I think he is a player who, what more does he have to prove right now? Like, what, just pulling up his numbers in terms of what he is doing in AAA, he's been a different guy. He's taken the ball the other way. He's hitting for power. There's a little more patience to his game. Since he's returned, 24 games, 83 plate appearances. Strikeout percentage is below 30%. It's at, it is. It's at 28.9%. His walk percentage is 14.5%, which is in line with where it was a year ago. His runs created plus is a 147. It was a 113 last year. And remember, everyone talked about how bad he was last year. He had a 113 runs created plus. The batting average is unsubstantiable, let's be honest. Like, he's not going to hit 300. He's got a 444 BABIP. And again, BABIP is good in the minors because it is a positive sign of contact. But you're looking at a situation here where it is, he's probably going to be like a 240 guy. You're kind of looking at a player not dissimilar from Carlos Santana with more strikeouts and less walks, and potentially more power. I think he should get called up. I mean, he's been on the 40 for 2 years in a row. There's not a whole lot left in terms of like options and what you do with him. Like, just looking, because he hasn't been called up yet. I guess that's the only reason his options might be lower, but he's been burning through options down there. He's got 2 options left. He's already 24. And we talked about Connor Capel earlier this week. Connor Capel, Will Benson, Nolan Jones, all that same draft class for the Cleveland Guardians. So I hope he gets called up. I think he's doing enough to kind of earn that opportunity. Looking at the other top prospects at that level who are on the 40-man, Ty Freeman, people are getting very excited, and he's been solid, but he hasn't been spectacular enough. But I guess I was always down on him to begin with, so it's not surprising that I'm like, okay, he's been good but not great. That's why I still kind of view him more as trade bait than anything else. I thought it was interesting over on The Athletic when they talked about like most likely player to be traded. That's who Zach Meisel picked as well, just as a little bit of someone else agreeing with me on that point of view. But yeah, that was, I think he does get called up soon. Thank you to you two for jumping in the chat. Let's do the box score bingo. Cleveland had 5 runs today on 3 hits. Minnesota did have 2 errors. That's 5 opportunities. And as previously mentioned, they had 10 walks and 2 hit batters. So they had 12 walk type situations. 12, which you combine with the 3 hits, gives you 15. And the 2 errors, 17 opportunities for Cleveland to get 5 runs. That's in line. Let's put it that way. Minnesota had 7 hits, just 2 walks, and I believe 1 hit batter. So that was 10 opportunities. They got 3 runs. That's also in line. Cleveland, I mean, credit to not giving up. 2 in the 8th, 2 in the 9th. Huge walk-off win. Players of the game in this one to me, I mean, Andres, of course. Like, you give it to him right there. I'm giving it to Straw. Straw has had his scuffles, but he reached base 3 times in this game. And no one else can say that. He also had the infield single that, with his speed down the line, they went to third and couldn't get Franmil, and it was a bad throw. And it was on his hit that those 2 runs came across. So that's your second star. In terms of third star, I'm like, this is where he and Ha a little bit. But I kind of want to give it to Sandy Leon because, I was wrong. I said that Straw was the only person to reach 3 times. Leon did too. And his walks came in big situations for Cleveland. He did not take it off, and they did take advantage of those errors. I mean, the one got that extra run across, and they took advantage of the Twins in this one. And they didn't, I mean, for a team that's had a lot of errors, Cleveland played a very clean game in this one. It was great to see. I know people still get, and I'm not the biggest Owen Miller defender, but like I said, some of the advanced stats don't hate him as a defensive first baseman. I'm going to pause this for the next commercial break, and then I'm going to come back and talk about a roster move and just talk about some of these minor league pitchers who are performing at an exceptional level, because pitching right now, starting pitching, is the Cleveland Guardians' biggest need. Okay, and that is the end of the commercial break. If you're watching on YouTube, there wasn't one, so that's the advantage of checking out YouTube, because I can't put in ad reads for those drop-in ads. But let's talk about it. I mentioned on yesterday's 2 days ago show, I thought Ian Gabout would get claimed. He did. He is now a Dodger, if you missed it. So he got claimed. Not only did he get claimed, he got claimed by a very good team. 2 for 2 in making those statements. I thought someone would be claimed. And if you go back to Bobby Bradley, I'm 3 for 3 in predicting who gets selected off waivers and who does not. I think looking at some of this minor league data, so the first thing as I look at some of the pitching data, let me pull up my stream here. So look at some of this pitching data is, okay, where did I put it? 1, when you're looking at K percentage, Daniel Espino is still king. Cade Smith may not be a name you're as familiar with. He is 2. He's pitched an A and AA this year. I feel like I'm going to cough in the mic. He was a 2017 draft pick by the Twins. So I'm trying to remember how Cade Smith came to the Guardians, because according to this, he doesn't have previous draft data. So was he not signed in 2017? Was he an undrafted free agent to the Guardians, maybe? Went to Mississippi State, it looks like, and was a reliever. So when you're looking at Cade Smith, this is where I get... That's a good point by B. Scruggs. The Twins had 28 runs, and the Guardians had 17, yet they still won this series 3-2. So Cade Smith, just to go back to this, it's interesting in the regard that this is a guy who was drafted out of high school by the Twins, did not sign, pitched. This can't be the same guy, because he's pitching right now for Mississippi State. Cade Smith, this has got to be the Vancouver. So he's a Hawaii kid who he's assigned to Team Canada. So yeah, he signed a minor league contract with the Guardians in 2020. And that's probably where I kind of forgot about him. But yeah, he got signed in 2020, which is the season, of course, where nobody played. So then last year in 2021 was his first season in the minors. And he performed pretty well. And then this year he is... he's been in Akron a little bit, and the ERA isn't great, but that strikeout, I mean, his strikeouts in the minors, his worst season, in small sample size, I shouldn't say season, was 12 per 9. So he's missing a ton of bats. Undrafted free agent, just kind of interesting to see those players in general. But number 4, Andrew Miziasic. Fascinating from the fact that you're talking about a guy who went to Northeastern, not exactly a program that is super well known for its drafted players. Did Savale maybe go there? There was someone recently from the Guardians who was there. But he was a reliever in college too. That's the other thing. Like most relievers we talk about, and I got a question recently from Alton Jr. and I should go look it up in my profile here because I always like to like those things from mailbag. And he has a point. Mailbag, Enright, Kelly, Mikolajczak, and Mezizic are all strike me as minor league depth, not prospect. We know most successful relievers are former starters and have plus stuff. Do you really think any of these guys have what it takes to be an impact reliever? I agree. Yeah, most guys are former starters. What stands out is Enright had the third best swinging strike percentage a year ago on this team, so it's maybe this stuff doesn't seem elite, but there's something going on there. And Kelly I haven't talked about as much. Mikolajczak has elite stuff. That fastball has been near triple digits. So again, maybe this year it's not quite there. And Misiasic, you just can't look past the data with him. That's the thing. You're looking at a small school guy who was a 4-year player, who was a cold weather, was in New York, and then went to a small school, and drafted in 2019 as a day 3 pick. The Guardians finally really worked with him a bunch last year, and the statistical jump is noticeable. And then this year, his command was refined. So I'm not going to sit back and say there's no chance for him because I can't look past the numbers. And even before this year, he's a guy who made the Fangraphs top 50 prospects. He's lower on the list, but he's a lefty. You don't need as much from a lefty in general compared to a lot of other, compared to a right-handed pitcher. I'm a believer in him, and the statistical performance is just impossible to look past. In terms of K percentage, he's striking out 39.9% of batters faced. It's not Daniel Espino at 51.5, but still, it's pretty good. And one of the guys I have to talk about, because I hadn't even realized this at all, Alex Young. Do you remember Alex Young? It was kind of a minor deal when he came to Cleveland last year because he was a Northeast Ohio kid. He was born in Northeast Ohio, didn't necessarily live there, but he was from the area, and we haven't had one of those guys in a while. He was a second-round pick out of TCU, struggled with Arizona, and was awful with Cleveland. There's no other way around it. He was awful a year ago. 28 years old, so he is an older player, but what he is doing in the minors, it's enough to make you kind of take a step back and not ask for help. I've got a small child, too much Daniel Tiger, and look at the overall performance and wonder if now that they've had some extra time with him, is he figuring things out, A, and B, now that he's not a starter, is he found another level? This whole idea we just talked about of, most great relievers are former starters. Alex Young was a starter. He was always a starter. He was a starter in college. At TCU, he's a starter for Arizona. He's a starter for Cleveland. And again, he was a first pick of the second round. He was a high second-round pick. And he didn't look good in Cleveland. They took him off the 40-man for good reason. But in 27 innings this year, strikeout per 9 of 13.3, walk per 9 of 2.0. He's been really good as a reliever. So, I don't know. I'd be curious to get better scouting reports on him, but he is kind of the player I went, that's interesting. So this is his first chance being a reliever. He's had a full offseason with Cleveland as opposed to Arizona. And statistically, the performance is through the roof. So maybe they found something there. If we're just looking, though, at things like FIP, talking about who are the dominant guys, of anyone in an A level or above, Jack Leftwich, who is one of those Florida arms who just did not progress during his time in Florida, which was all of the pitchers they drafted a year ago. And it's why the rumor of them liking Brandon Sprout, the Florida pitcher who was inconsistent in terms of maintaining velocity, I almost want to say go ahead and mock Sprout to them at pick 38 or 37. Is that where they're pick? 37. Put him there. He is their type of player. He is an inconsistent Florida arm, and they know that Florida's development is not ideal and that they can easily fix those guys. So, just something to keep in the back of your mind. Brandon Sprout from Florida. Cleveland is very clearly sees a program not doing the right things in terms of pitcher development and are just mining them. I wouldn't be shocked to see Sprout and Barco end up in Cleveland, which would make 5 starters in the last 2 years if they draft both of those guys. Because the other thing, Barco he was pretty solidly more of a second-round pick than a first-round pick. He's a guy mocked as a first-round pick out of high school. He didn't add anything. which, hey, Tommy Mace didn't add anything. And, Jack Leftwich didn't add anything. And Brandon Sprout was inconsistent. Might notice a trend here. But yeah, you go through those guys, and Barco is hurt, and I talked about Sprout being inconsistent. Why wouldn't you want to go to Cleveland? Like, if you can get like similar money or even slightly, like if I am Hunter Barco, I want to go to Cleveland. I'll take a little bit less because I know they're going to be my best chance of development. They're going to sit there in that year where I'm recovering. By the time I'm ready to go next summer, I'm going to hit the ground running. They're going to have a plan in place, and they're probably going to add 3 to 4 miles an hour just off the start for me. So yeah, I'm totally expecting those Florida arms. But just, Davis Sharp doesn't get talked about. We talked about Tanner Bibby so much, or Bybee, I should say, because of what he has done this year, kind of really jumping out there. Or Trent Denholm, who really had that big velocity jump. Some of those guys from last year's class who really emerged. And someone like Davis Sharp doesn't necessarily get the talk, but he is like Logan Allen. He was the two-way guy who now gets to focus just on pitching. Clemson starters. I mean, who's there been since Clark Schmidt? It's not a program. It's a program that always gets talent. Like Mac Anglin was a potential day 1, day 2 pick out of Ohio 3 years ago. Like, he had some first-round hype at points. Ohio has not had a first-round pick out of the high school ranks a while. Now I go back to like Cameron Vergara, who like him and Zach Shannon were like the two big guys that year, and Shannon ended up bouncing around through a bunch of programs, eventually getting drafted by Texas as like a 5th-year senior. And Vergara was not even in the Tampa organization that long. Also from Beast Grills, that Guardians are back in the 3rd spot because Tampa just lost. Good information to have. So yeah, it's been a while since Ohio's kind of had a strong high school anything, which is funny because you go back to the 80s where they literally in back-to-back years had the first high school player off the board with Kent Merker and Ken Griffey Jr. And then the year before that, they even had another one, like that was top 10. And now you got the situation where it's been a decade since they had a top 2 round pick. I'm going to cough again, so let's... That's what happens when you talk for 32 straight minutes. But yeah, when it comes to the draft, Jacob Miller maybe ends up there. We'll see if an Ohio kid can crack in. But this team, well, long story short, Mac Anglin was a really kind of explosive arm talent. Most of those guys don't get out of either Louisville, Kentucky, or not so much Kentucky anymore, but Louisville or Vandy. It's not that often you see someone go somewhere else. He went to Clemson. He's going to go lower, and he was expected to go out of high school. It's like when Seth Lonsway went to Ohio State. He was like one of the highest-rated prospects, maybe the highest-rated prospect in my lifetime to go to Ohio State for baseball. And that was Ohio State's like best class ever. It was Ruby was the outfielder, who I don't think ever really played, and Xavier Woods was also supposed to go, and he ended up signing with Texas and like a 13th-round pick. And Dylan Dingler I loved a lot, and he ended up proving me right in that regard. But they had this class that was really strong and just didn't end up with a ton to show for it. It was coming off a year where they had 6 players drafted. It was one of their most successful draft classes ever, and it was just kind of unfortunate for that program that they couldn't build on that. But, yeah, see, I love the draft. I'm going completely off the rails here with this. But just going back to it, it's like Leftwich has a 183 FIP. Now, he is 23 playing an A-ball, but a walk rate of 149 per 9, 12.53. They have him starting. He was a reliever last year in college. We talked about Davis Sharp. Might not be surprised Gavin Williams is 6. Nick Enright, who I talked about as a potential relief option, who's been really good over the past few years. He is 8th in that. And Joey Cantillo sitting down there at 11. How lucky are they there was no Rule 5? Cantillo would not be in Cleveland if there had been a Rule 5. That's no Rule 5 draft this past year benefit this organization maybe more than any other organization in baseball. It's an interesting list. Will Dion was a recent high pick. I mean, they just have, Raymond Burgos. How often have I talked about him as a sleeper? I was talking about him as a sleeper back in the day when I was talking about Cody Morris as a sleeper. They're at the same level. It's just unfortunately Burgos can never stay healthy, but he's still performing. It is a fun time to be a Guardians fan. And at this point in time, yes, they have all this talent in the minors. We know it's all not going to hit. We know there's going to be players who come out of nowhere. And we know there's going to be guys who are viewed as can't miss who miss, because that's how this game works. So that's why I'm still all for going and getting someone who can help you right now. Long story short, short story long. I still say go get Pablo Lopez, especially if you can do it without giving up Stephen Kwan. Especially if you can do it without giving up a Will Brennan. If you can go out there and figure out a trade with them that makes sense, you don't give up a Valera. If you can go and figure out that right deal, the problem is they want a center fielder, and if you're not giving up Kwan, Straw doesn't have the value right now, and he's very close to Jose, so I'm not going to trade him. But it's like, where do you go? It has to be Will Brennan, but how high is Brennan's value right now? I don't know. But they need to go out and make something like a 3 or 4 for 1, and that is where I stand. I've gone long, as always. Third segment, all draft, all prospects. First two, we're taking for granted how exciting this team is, and I think we just need to sit back and not necessarily enjoy it, in the words of our owner, but know that this is a team that's doing some pretty amazing things right now that is only going to get better. Like I said, Valera is crushing balls in Double A. I don't know if it sounds a lot filthier than I meant it, but you know what I mean. Will Brennan is just exploded this year on the scene. They have guys who are going to need to be added or are already on the 40-man. We should see waves of talent hitting this team throughout the year. There should be more players stepping up. And outside of catcher and outside of starting pitching, I don't really see a starting pitcher who's going to step in this year unless Cody Morris gets healthy, and we haven't heard a word out of Cody Morris in a while, and that's a little bit of a concern for me. But unless Morris is healthy, most of those guys, you're not going to, Espino hasn't been healthy, or maybe he would be an option. They don't have a ready-made starter, and then Bo Naylor, we'll have to see. Again, you want to see more than just one hot half. Every time there's one hot half, I think about Wes Hodges, which could be something, back how long I've been doing this in the Guardian. As I stated, I'm Jeff Ellis, and as I end every show,